This is Wilderness Medicine Wednesday, episode 4. Let's talk about tick-borne illnesses and prevention, primarily prevention. Be warned, pictures of ticks on skin and biting people are coming soon. Run away if that stuff makes you run away. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Wilderness Medicine Wednesday, episode 4, as I make an adjustment to the camera. As always, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. These videos don't get as many views as some of the other videos that I make, but I really enjoy making them. And I think to a sort of a core group, they resonate. So we're going to keep going with them for a little while. And stick around. At the end of the video, I've got a juicy little bit of conspiracy theory, Lyme disease conspiracy theory. Hey, if you're liking this content, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. My books are available on Ko-fi in digital form and Amazon in physical form. You can also buy me a coffee or buy a gear list or buy a float plan. All of those things available on Ko-fi. All right, back to me. There are a number of diseases you can get from ticks. Lyme disease is by far the most common in North America, predominantly in the Northeast, but it is spreading pretty nicely. I guess, from a tick's point of view. But there is also ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, of course, and alpha-gal, which is newer, but a friend of mine actually has that. Another wilderness medicine instructor I know has that, and she can't eat any meats because you get a negative reaction, an allergic reaction when you eat meat. And even can't even have something that's been cooked in the same pan as meat has been cooked in. It's pretty incredible. And so that is just a great sort of indicator or impetus that really prevention is key with these illnesses. Prevention is key with a lot of things in wilderness medicine. Far better than having to do the treatment, and this is one of those where prevention is key. And as outdoor leaders, I think that it's super important that we're taking precautions and keeping track of the people that we're adventuring with so that they're not getting these sorts of illnesses. I'm going to leave the treatment of the illnesses to people who have had way more schooling than me. I tend to live on the front side of issues, not the back side of medical issues. And so I'll leave treatment to those specific issues to doctors, as I am just a former paramedic and current wilderness medicine instructor. As always, I'm getting a lot of information out of the Knowles Wilderness Medicine book. I looked in Medicine for Mountaineering, which is my other go-to, and there was nothing in that I could find about dealing with ticks themselves. There were entries for treatment of some of the illnesses, but nothing on dealing with the ticks themselves, which is really what I want to focus on today. I also dropped by the CDC, which is a pretty good resource for a lot of things. Okay, so ticks go through various stages of growth. Most people that get Lyme disease are getting it from bites from ticks that are in the nymph stage because they tend to feed longer. So again, I mentioned that prevention is key here. There are all sorts of things we can do. The CDC says, don't go in places with grass or bushes or trees. That's helpful for those of us that spend most of our time in places with grass and bushes and trees. Things that you can do, though, is wear lighter colored clothing, just really making it easier to see the ticks and therefore getting them off of you before they even have a chance to bite you. I'm also a big fan of permethrin, which you spray on your clothing, not on your person, which works really well against ticks. I have been known to be heading into tick zones in the summer in North Carolina, and I'm just going to grab permethrin and spray the bottom third of my pants. I don't know how effective that is. It's supposed to soak in and then dry, but it's got to be better than nothing, right? Most people that get Lyme disease never even know there was a tick on them. Both my son and wife have had Lyme. Actually, I think my wife had ehrlichiosis when we lived in Putnam County, New York, which is not far from Lyme, Connecticut. And it's because we were really avid hikers at the time, and they never even knew they got bitten. And I'm not basing that statistic solely on that experience. I know from the literature that most people that have Lyme report not even knowing they had a tick on them. So here are some things that might surprise you. Number one, if a tick lands on you, you do not have Lyme disease. If a tick bites you, you do not have Lyme disease. If a tick lands on you and bites you and gets engorged with blood, you might have Lyme disease, but probably not. What has to happen is the tick has to land, bite, get engorged, and then release. Because when it releases, it injects some of your now infected blood back into your system, and that's where you get Lyme disease or other tick-borne illnesses, the ones I mentioned, alpha-gal, ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain. So our goal is to get the tick off us really before it's engorged, but certainly before it releases. And at the same time, we want to make sure that when we're getting rid of it, it doesn't do what it wants to do, which is send your blood back into you. Okay, let's talk about removal of the tick using fine-tipped tweezers. Most first aid kits don't come with tweezers suitable for this, but using fine, pointed, tipped tweezers, get under the body of the tick as close to the skin as possible. I actually try to push down into the skin a little bit, then squeeze, and then pull straight up, not out at an angle. What you don't want to do is squeeze the body of the tick, which will, of course, then force the infected blood back into the patient or yourself. Another tool that you can use besides tweezers is a tick key, which I've seen many times and works really well. I carry tweezers because they can do a lot of things, whereas a tick key can really only do one thing. But if you're adventuring in like serious tick land, I would consider a tick key. Do not, under any circumstances, use a recently extinguished hot match or alcohol or anything like that to try and get the tick to release, because when you do those things, it will force the tick to release and disgorge blood back into the patient or yourself. So just tweezers or a tick key to remove the tick. Okay, here is your conspiracy theory for the day. Hopefully your conspiracy theory for the day. So Lyme disease is named for Lyme, Connecticut. There are actually 3 towns in southeastern Connecticut. Old Lyme, there's Southern Lyme, something like that, and Lyme, Connecticut. This is where in 1975 there was a cluster of outbreaks, which is where the disease was originally sort of identified. The disease was then named for Lyme, Connecticut, which is 17 miles as the crow flies from Plum Island on the very tip of Long Island. Not far, actually, from where I grew up. Plum Island is a small island right off the tip of Orient Point, which is the northern point. Long Island comes out into 2 points, and it's the northern point. Plum Island is home to the Plum Island Animal Disease Center, where all sorts of research on animal diseases is done. They say things like hoof and mouth disease and stuff like that to help prevent the spread of animal diseases into the United States. However, there is a conspiracy theory that Plum Island created Lyme disease and it escaped the lab. Being only 17 miles as the crow flies, that wouldn't be too hard. I will say that Lyme disease is very similar in many ways to a tick-based illness in Northern Europe that mimics it. They mimic each other very much and are probably the exact same disease that spread with people and mice, actually, across the Atlantic. And that disease predates Lyme disease in the 1970s by many, many, many years, over 100 years. So the likelihood that the Lyme disease was created in a lab, conspiracy theory, is probably false. But I will say there is also proof of this in the Montauk Monster, which I think you should just Google. I don't want to get into it here. So there's lots of conspiracy theories about Plum Island. Maybe I should go kayaking there. But there's lots of conspiracies around Plum Island, which I think are pretty hilarious. So that is our conversation about tick-borne illnesses. I am completely cracking myself up now. Prevention is key. Let's be careful out there. I'll see you outside. I'm not the only crazy person.